Welcome, everyone. Today's training is brought to you by the Minnesota Transformation Initiative. The topic is leveraging assistive technology to support competitive integrated employment. Some housekeeping before we proceed. Today's training is going to be recorded. This will be available on the MTI website under the trainings tab. I did drop that link into the chat, but Sherry, perhaps you can put it into the chat again. We're going to ask participants to remain on mute to reduce background noise. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat or raise your hand, and a colleague of mine will be monitoring that, and we will get those questions answered as best as we can. My name is Brian Bajan. I work at the University of Minnesota's Institute on Community Integration. A little bit about the work we do. So this project is the Minnesota Transformation Initiative, and it is made possible through a grant from the Minnesota Department of Human Services and in partnership with the Institute on Community Integration, the Institute for Community Inclusion, that's out of UMass Boston, Strengths at Work, LLC, the Arc of Minnesota, and Quillo. And this initiative is designed to help organizations, service providers in Minnesota expand competitive integrated employment and community life engagement outcomes. Part of the MTI project includes these quarterly trainings where we focus on themes related to organizational transformation and best practices in employment and community services. This project has a landing page. As I mentioned before, that link is in the chat. On that landing page, you'll find more information about our project as well as resources. You can find information on upcoming trainings and register trainings, as well as access recordings from previous trainings. So today's training topic touches on the following elements of the 10 essential elements, and this is a holistic approach to services as well as active person-centered job development. The 10 elements of provider transformation guide the work that we do on the MTI project. So we have several presenters today, which we're very excited about. Jolene and Lindsay will discuss how the Minnesota state-operated community services is leveraging assistive technology to support people with disabilities to find and maintain competitive integrated employment. Ray will tell us about the Employer Reasonable Accommodation Fund and how job developers can leverage this resource to support Minnesota employers as they provide job accommodations to applicants and employees with disabilities. Jameis will tell us about Minnesota STAR program, which promotes the use of assistive technology at home, school, work, and in the community. And last but not least, Dell will share their experience using assistive technology on the job. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay and Jolene.
Thank you, Brian. It's nice to be here today. So welcome to our training on leveraging assistive technology to support employment services. We're going to talk a little bit today about all the things that we have learned. I am an employment services vocational manager for MSOCS, which is, as Brian said, Minnesota State Operated Community Services. And my partner, Lindsay, is here to join us too. Lindsay, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Jolene. I'm Lindsay Alexander, and I also work for MSOCS just like Jolene, but I have a little bit of a different role. I'm the Regional Rehabilitation Supervisor, and I get to work with all 20 of our vocational programs across the state. So we're in, urban areas, rural areas, and 8 of our crisis homes, with a focus on competitive integrated employment. I also get to teach the Minnesota CE curriculum. So I am really focused on competitive integrated employment and really excited to share with you all today this new territory we're entering with assistive technology and how that can support our individuals with their competitive integrated employment. Next slide.
So just to get started here, what we initially did is that actually our executive leadership team had come up with an idea to pitch to the different service lines on promoting a different way of focus of having innovation dollars allotted to us. And it was a very interesting scenario where we were able to really dive deep into the assistive technology world. So we did a project pitch, we gathered a team together and came up with a few different ideas. And quite honestly, we are not experts in this part of the service field at all. We've been providing employment services in the community for quite some time. We've heard about assistive technology. It's been around for quite a while, but it also found like it was a newfound initiative for us to really dive deep into this. And so this innovation dollars allotted to us really gave us that intention and focus to try to bring this forward, dive deep into it, and figure out what is already out there for us, but also how can we improve as an employment service provider in finding assistive technology to ultimately help us with promoting success for the different job seekers that we work with. So I highly recommend, if you're a provider that is looking at getting into assistive technology, to do some sort of a promotion where it's this intentional initiative within your agency. A couple of things that we found that it helped us do is it really shined the light on assistive technology. Like I said, we developed a team around this to dig deep into the different resources out there. But it also helped us hold each other accountable and make us move forward in finding the different areas. Another great aspect of this project pitch was that we had the immediate leadership buy-in. And sometimes with these initiatives, we know it's hard to get to that point and make sure that everybody on the team in our agency is on board with something so large as assistive technology. So that was a huge bonus for us. We also found the training available to us, and we're going to talk about that coming up here a little bit further. But we found a program through CSUN is the acronym there, and it's a California State University that offers a program. So we'll talk about that a little bit today. We're also going to bring to you the different resources that we have found in the last year and a half or so in digging into this. It's really been mind-blowing to find what's already out there, what's already being done. Many times it's free of charge for the different resources too. So we're going to share a little bit about that today. We're also going to have Jameis, as Brian said, talk to us more about the STAR program. And then Ray is here to talk about ERAF. So a couple of different resources there. And then towards the end, we will hear from Dell, who is using assistive technology in different capacities. Another great part of this project pitch was really we developed a pilot program. So we knew that this was going to be a large undertaking. We knew it was going to require some funds up front, but we didn't want to just jump into, the first thing that we came across. So we did a bit of a pilot project, and we'll get into that a little bit further in the presentation as well. Next slide, please.
So I like how Jolene said, we needed that mindfulness, that kind of purpose to charge forward into territory that we maybe weren't comfortable with. I'm just going to be honest with y'all. I needed a push into assistive technology. This is not something that comes naturally to me, but I was able to see the benefit of it. And once we had the leadership and some of those funds behind us, there was no turning back. We're already in the deep end. The only option is to move forward. And one of the great things is on our team, we had staff who were naturally inclined to technology, already interested and excited to dig in. And all they needed was the opportunity to really get some of that knowledge under their feet. And that really for us was the CSUN training, where they received certification to be assistive technology practitioners. That really was one of the first steps for us. All that knowledge that they gained in the class, and then also we'll be talking about some of those resources they then connected with, and the expertise that they began to build really started to pave this kind of forward momentum. And as you guys can all kind of understand, bringing knowledge to our team was the foundation of starting on this path of assistive technology. So first, it's those assistive technology practitioners. And now we're starting to work on some of the other elements. So bringing to supervisors and managers knowledge of how to fund assistive technology for people receiving employment services, either through the waiver or through VRS. What's the process? How do we move forward? How do we make this, work in real time with people obtaining employment and needing technology to be successful? And we have a training coming up on the 19th. So really looking forward to that. We also had a lead training day where our lead staff come together in person, and we actually brought Jay and Jameis, who you guys are going to hear from today, to that training day to really give some of those lead staff some information as to what are we talking about when we're talking about assistive technology, what can that look like, and what are some of those resources out there. As we start to implement this, we really need to think about what do our DSPs need to know? They're the boots on the ground. They're the ones at the job. They're the ones seeing the potential barriers or positives where assistive technology could be brought in. But wow, there's just not enough time in the day for all the things DSPs need to be trained on and able to do, because they're out there doing the job coaching. So really trying to dial into what is important for your role and how can we all be pulling together to identify the people we support who could benefit from assistive technology. And the more we dig into it, it's rare that somebody can't benefit from assistive technology, right? So just really starting to understand those elements. And one thing we've really identified is we need people excited about technology, because there's a lot of Lindsays out there that just kind of freeze when we think about technology. We think, not another thing I've got to learn and implement. I'm already bombarded, right? We need those people who are early adopters, excited with technology, and we call those our tech champions. They're embedded in our vocational programs. They're the ones working with the staff who have the CSUN certification to be assistive technology practitioners. And then we've got those boots on the ground people who are really working on how to create this working within our programs. Next slide.
So a couple of resources that we found that we want to ultimately share with all of you. They're available to everybody out there, all providers. And we're going to hear from some of the resources themselves here coming up next. But just to briefly talk about what we learned from each one of these resources. The Minnesota STAR program, as we've all said, Jameis is going to talk next about that program. I won't get into those details. But one of the things we learned that was very valuable is they offer the demonstrations. They'll come out. They're really great to work with. They'll come out and do a training for, like Lindsay referenced, your lead staff, your designated coordinators, your supervisors, different roles, job coaches. They'll come out and do some of those demonstrations to show you different devices, but also just open your mind to some of the options out there. And that's what we found to be so valuable is we don't know what we don't know. We don't know the devices that are out there. And every time that I've been a part of their presentations and listening, I feel like I've gathered something new or different from that next training. And like as I referenced before, it's just sort of mind blowing to know what's already out there and available for people to be successful in their communities with employment, but also for everyday life activities as well. So the Minnesota Star option is a really great option to learn more, to teach people, and that comes in all different formats. And so those trainings are really important. The other huge thing that we're going to hear a little bit about in a little while is they have items to borrow. That was huge for us to learn because the price of the different devices out there and all of the software and all the different things that are available, whether they're technological devices or not, it's just too much to know about. And so they have the different options there that people can sign up to borrow from them and use them for a couple of weeks and see if that's the right fit before we actually help the person make the purchases and find the funding options out there to buy those items. And it's hugely important to be able to borrow those items and not have to purchase everything. So another great resource, it kind of just fell into our laps, is the Minnesota NEAT program as well. We actually have Elena and Anna coming to our supervisor group training next week, and they're going to talk to us about additional resources. And they also have developed a community of practice where the staff that we've sent through the CSUN Assistive Technology Assessment Program, they were joined together with the Minnesota NEAT program and then learn more about the community of practices that are available. Hugely important, again, to know what the different options are out there, to stay ahead of all of the advances and different technology that's being developed on a daily basis. So again, super good resource that is available to anybody as well. ERAF, we have Ray here. He's going to talk more about that. That's another funding option or a reimbursement that we learned about for the employer that potentially has to pay for some accommodations. And so Ray is going to give us a little bit more information about that shortly. And we also we continue to dive into the funding sources to be able to help people purchase the items and the different devices that are needed. So that's something that I think we're ongoing trying to find new resources. It's just about every week or so that I'm hearing about a different opportunity or a different option, or how they were able to fund this, or where to reach out to fund another option. And so those are always developing. I anticipate we're going to continue to learn about how to fund those assistive technology purchases into the future as well. I think that it will change. VRS, another acronym down there at the bottom of the screen, Vocational Rehabilitation Services. For those of you unfamiliar with that acronym, they are another funding option that's available to people that are within their program. And they also offer an option for having an assistive technology assessment performed as well. So again, another really great resource to utilize if somebody is working within the VRS program. Next slide, please. So next, we're going to hear from Jameis. Take it away, Jameis. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for inviting me and allowing me to speak a little bit about the Minnesota STAR program. Next slide, please. So the Minnesota STAR program stands for A System of Technology to Achieve Results, and we are Minnesota's federally funded Assistive Technology Act program. What that means is that federally, every state is required to have this program, including our 6 U.S. territories. And so we represent Minnesota, the Minnesota STAR program, and we are housed in the Department of Administration right by the Capitol in St. Paul, Minnesota. That's our main office. And the gist of what we do is that we provide assistive technology services to all Minnesotans. So we do not require a proof of disability to utilize our program. Although you can have one, you don't have to have one. We don't care. We're helping any Minnesotan. So like Jolene said, we're helping people with disabilities, but we're also helping people who have aging parents, who have a nephew that has a disability that is looking for some ways to be more independent. And the biggest thing is that there's no cost for our program services. There's a little bit of cost associated with our loan program, and I'll get to that in just a second. But for just general services, which I'm going to go over next, these are all free to anybody who reaches out to us. Next slide, please. So we are a robust team of 3.5 individuals, and you're probably thinking, how are you serving the entire state of Minnesota with 3.5 individuals? Well, we're not doing that alone. So we do have partners that are strategically placed throughout the state that help us with our program services. So we have a partner in Moorhead. We have a partner in Duluth. We have a partner in Rochester. We have a partner in St. Cloud, and we have a few in the Twin Cities as well. And so we're all working together to serve all 4 corners of the state of Minnesota. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to kind of get into the meat and potatoes of what we do. So we provide device demonstrations, device equipment loans, both short-term and open-ended. We provide information and assistance, and we are a source for training, like Jolene mentioned. Next slide, please. I'm going to go into the specifics of each of those categories. So the device demonstrations. Why would you request a device demonstration? And who can? So really anyone can request a device demonstration. Again, we serve all of Minnesota with or without a disability. So anybody can request a device demonstration. What a demonstration does is it allows us to compare different features. So we can look at the device. We can look at all the different functions of that device. We can look at the buttons where they're located. How are we going to access that device? If you can't hold the device, we're looking at like ways to mount that for you so that you're able to actually see the device without holding devices, things like that. So a demonstration can really help kind of draw out all the other things that you don't think about when it comes to assistive technology. Yes, you have an iPad, but I can't access that. I can't push the button. I can't hold that device. And that's kind of where a demonstration is very helpful, because then we can see those little intricacies and we can help with those as well. A demonstration also is very important for devices that are similar, but they're different vendors. So like speech communication devices, for instance, there's probably a dozen or so different types of speech communication devices. So demonstration we can take 2 or 3 items, we can compare and contrast what's similar about them, what's different about them, so that you can make an informed decision about what device is going to work for you best. And again, that does help with decision making. So if you can talk about the questions that you have about a device, that's going to really help you make a really informed decision on a device that might really help you. Next slide, please. The device loan program. Again, I mentioned there's a short-term loan and an open-ended loan. So our short-term loans are for 45 days or less. So about a month and a half that you actually get to trial a device in your own environments. So you could be using this at school, at work, at home, at your cabin, wherever you are, you can take this equipment with you. Again, it really does help with decision making. So if you can actually push the buttons and play with the features and be able to utilize this environment and test it out with people, you're really going to have an informed decision about whether that device is going to work for you or not. Oftentimes, professionals will reach out to us. So again, we service all of Minnesota. So I'll have a lot of OTs, occupational therapists, speech therapists, physical therapists who will reach out to us, who want to know about equipment that they're not familiar with. So like Jolene said, she had no idea what assistive technology entailed. So Jolene can check out devices herself and try out devices so that she's developing her skills in assistive technology. So a lot of those therapists will check out equipment just to better their knowledge about assistive technology so that they can then transfer that to patients that they serve. It can also provide a short-term accommodation to get you by. A lot of people already have assistive technology like speech communication devices, and we know that technology breaks. And when technology breaks, especially like a speech communication device, that is their voice. And so this can provide a short-term accommodation to get you through until your device gets repaired or replaced. So that's always keep that in the back of your head. If you already have assistive technology and we have that in our library, you can loan that out as a short-term accommodation. As our devices age, because we know that technology ages pretty quickly in about 5 to 7 years, devices can be discontinued. Apps can go away. Equipment can get really worn down because you're using it every day, all day long. When our devices get to that level, they're older, they're discontinued, they may be worn. We move them into our open-ended loan program. And what that means is that a person can keep this with no due date. You're not tied to the 45 days or less for the short-term loan. You get to keep this device for as long as you want. Next slide, please. The loan process. I just want to quickly talk about that. You may not know what you want, and that's okay. But you can reach out to us and you can ask us, what are the devices that will help me with this, this, and this? And this is what I'm struggling with. And we will work with you to try to figure out a solution. And if we don't know of the solution, or if we don't have a solution, because sometimes we do run into that, we are hooked up with so many different partners and different organizations that can really help you maybe come up with a potential solution. You can call us, you can email us, you can arrange a device demonstration to help make those decisions. And then part of the process is completing the appropriate paperwork. So we require a loan agreement to be signed and returned back to us. Once we receive that loan agreement, we will pay the cost of shipping the device to you anywhere in Minnesota. At the end of the 45-day loan, you are paying the cost of shipping the device back to us. So that is the only cost associated with our program, is with shipping the device back to us at the end of the 45-day loan. Now, if it's open-ended, you don't have to return that, so you can keep that. Next slide, please. We do have an online library. So if you go to our website, it's MN, as in Minnesota, mn.at, Assistive Technology, the number 4, all.com. When you come to our website, this is another way to kind of narrow down what technology you might want. We have on our home screen 8 different categories that you can select that will help drill down the technology to that specific category. So for instance, categories are hearing, vision, speech communication, daily living, etc. And so you can drill down on those topics or those categories, and then it's going to start displaying technology related to those categories. So with each entry, it's going to have a picture. It's going to have a description of what it does. It's going to have links to which partner is housing that location, because we have all of our partners on our inventory as well. It's going to have the potential cost of that device and links to the manufacturer's websites, if possible. Next slide. With that, I don't have anything else. I left some contact information if you want to reach out to us with questions about assistive technology. And again, I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity to present to you about the Minnesota STAR program.
Thank you, Jameis. Such great information. Like I said, they have been a huge resource for us that we're going to continue to utilize some of the great things that they're able to share for all of Minnesotans. It's just amazing, the things that are out there, and they're so wonderful to work with. So thank you, Jameis. Next up is Ray. If you advance the slide here, and Ray, if you're ready to take it over.
All right, thank you very much for having me here. So Just to give you an overview of myself really quickly. I'm Ray McCoy, the program coordinator for the Employer Reasonable Accommodation Fund, a program here with the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. So, in my role, I'm deeply involved in the marketing and outreach initiatives, targeting employers and our partners to increase awareness about ERAF and its benefits, as well as providing technical assistance to employers, to help them implement reasonable accommodations. So, I would say, kind of a little bit more overlapping. The only difference between, I guess, my role and Jameis's role is that he has more of like, the options there that are utilized, where myself, on certain like assistive or reasonable accommodations such as ramps or doors or whatnot, we provide also guidance on how to make sure that employers are setting those up correctly so that they are ensuring, ADA compliance as well as compliance here locally with Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry. With that being said, next slide, please. So, before I get into the background of the program or whatnot, let me just kind of give you an overview about how ERAF works. So, with an employer, what happens is that, let's say that I hire somebody with a disability, either within the applicant phase or they start working for me, they have a disability, um, and they need reasonable accommodations of some sort. I would first purchase that reasonable accommodation for them, and then I would apply for ERAF reimbursement through the ERAF website, which you'll get here near the end. And the most that I could receive in a state fiscal year is $30,000. So, how this came to be was because we recognized for quite some time that we, as the state of Minnesota, need to support inclusivity within workplaces, small to mid-sized workplaces, especially. But, the one major barrier is that when it comes to reasonable accommodations, there are a lot of, barriers that a lot of small to mid-sized businesses either have or perceive. And therefore, we said, hey, let's look at a program that we can help these businesses offset their costs. So as a result, when we developed a proposal, so we being, different entities within the state, VRS, Revoke Rehab Services, State Services for the Blind, as well as the Minnesota Council of Disabilities got together. They proposed, a program like this to the legislature, and it was approved. As you can see here, any sort of purchases made beginning July 1st will be July 1st, 2023 will be reimbursed. It's a pilot program as of now that, is slated to expire June 30th, 2025. However, we have word that we can continue on, especially since we have quite a bit of money left over for reimbursement. So, don't be alarmed with that. So going back to this, what happened was the legislature approved this, and they, granted us a total of 4 million over these last 2 years, 2 million per fiscal year. And out of that, 400,000, as you can see, is earmarked for admin costs, marketing, and really run the program. So we have at $3.2 million that we're able to use to help, reimburse small to mid-sized businesses for any sort of reasonable accommodations they've built. One last thing I want to note here is that, when the legislature came out this program, they asked, who would like to run it in State Services for the Blind subdivision within DEED, raise their hand. It's like, yep, we'll go ahead and get this started. But as I stated, this is a DEED program in and of itself. All right. So next slide, please. So when it comes to ERAF, we try to set ourselves apart from other, many other government initiatives, not to knock anything, but we want to make sure that the criteria is simple and straightforward. So as long as a business is obviously domiciled in Minnesota, they have less than 500 employees, and generate less than 5 million in gross annual revenue, then that business would qualify for potential ERAF reimbursement on reasonable accommodations. All right. And on the next slide, as I mentioned at the beginning, an employer can receive up to $30,000 in reimbursement per fiscal year. And our fiscal year, for those of you who don't know, is as you can see here, July 1st to the 1st of the previous year through June 30th of, the current year. So how that would work is, for accommodation expenses have to be at least $250, and that could be either for one-time reasonable accommodation or a combination of two or more. Right. But the most that we can reimburse on each individual one-time reasonable accommodation is $15,000. So I'll give you an example of this. Let's say that I hire somebody who's in a wheelchair and they need access to the building. And as a result, I install 2 wheelchair ramps, one in the front and one in the emergency exit. The first ramp costs $17,000, and let's say the second one is $12,000. So this is how ERAF would work. The first ramp, I would get a reimbursement at $15,000, while the second one, I would be fully reimbursed at that $12,000, thus leaving me with $3,000 remaining that I can claim a reimbursement for any other accommodations for either this employer or another employer applicant throughout the fiscal year. In contrast, ongoing reasonable accommodations don't have those minimum or maximum spending requirements, but once a business accumulates a total of $30,000 in spending, then we would just have to stop reimbursing them. So going back to the same scenario, let's say that this same employee of mine's also needed a sign language interpreter, or some sort of ongoing assistive technology that's needed within that would cost, say, $4,500. So how it would work is I would submit another application to the ERAF program for that $4,500 for these ongoing, interpretation services, but I would only get back the $3,000 because that's all I have left within this fiscal year. But come July, I would get I would be able to get another $30,000 that I can claim on reimbursement. So it's pretty neat. So on the next slide, so we support a wide array of reasonable accommodations. And the big thing is that in order for it to be seen as a reasonable accommodation, it has to align with the Americans with Disabilities Act. So, for those of you who don't know, the ADA defines a reasonable accommodation as any sort of modification to the application, hiring process, the job, the way the job is done, or the work environment that enables a qualified individual with a disability to perform, the essential functions of the job. So in addition to things like installing ramps or other physical modifications, which may be like altering restrooms to ensure that they are accessible for any employees with mobility issues or whatnot, or adapting elevators or stair lifts or whatnot for an employee to reach, certain levels of the building. With advancements in, assistive technology, employers can even incorporate AI tools as a reasonable accommodation. So some examples could be things like virtual reality training programs for an employee with, like a learning disability or even a physical disability, AI personal assistants, one of them being, ChatGPT, which can assist in drafting emails, reports, or other sort of written materials, which is, might be good for somebody with, maybe dyslexia, just throwing out, just some ideas or scenarios here. But also there's things like adjustable workstations, that are controlled by AI. And unlike, traditional ergonomic stations, these automatically adjust to meet the user's ergonomic needs, right? So on the next slide, let's talk a little bit about, technical assistance and consultation. So our goal is not just to kind of leave employers here to figure it out. We want to make sure that we are giving employers as much insight as we can. And actually, sometimes within some of these types of consultations, I might call on Jameis to, talk with the employer alongside of me because of his expertise within the STAR program regarding reasonable accommodations. But overall, the biggest things that we focus on here is making sure that as an employer, right, that they have an understanding of what options or tools are available to them, because as you probably are aware, sometimes like they may not always know what's the best fit for the employee or for that employee because the employee doesn't know. So this is a great thing to do, but also let's say that the employer has an idea of what could potentially be a reasonable accommodation. It's always good to check with us before you purchase it because we don't want the employer to get blindsided. We want to make sure that we could let them know, yep, that's something that we could reimburse, or no, unfortunately, that doesn't fall under, that category. But so things such as like, compliance on ADA guidance, like I said earlier, we also provide, ways of implementing reasonable accommodations, and that includes making sure that the employer has all the ADA guidelines from the from the Department of Labor and Industry on Minnesota accessibility standards to make sure that the stuff is being installed correctly and it meets all compliance. But also, giving them different types of support. So, I mean, I know that we talked a little bit about some of the trainings, like CERT trainings here for businesses. Those are things that I would refer them to within DEED or some other state program. And finally, just, providing different types of support, being that we're still a fairly new program and one of its kind. New questions always arise. So, different things that, we could talk about here later, such as eligibility, in terms of like a nonprofit, for example, that might be eligible, or, even employment status. We don't care if it's a full-time, part-time, seasonal, temporary, or even a volunteer. They're still an employee at that organization, and therefore they are still eligible as long as the employer is eligible to receive reimbursement. On the next slide. So let me share a heartwarming success story about how the ERAF program is really making a difference. This is Ellie here, who's a dedicated employee at the Dunn Brothers Coffee Shop in Hopkins, and one of 3 Dunn Brothers franchises owned by the franchisee that I connected with. So, thanks to ERAF, the franchisee was able to purchase a specialized automated espresso machine that makes tasks accessible for employees like Ellie with disabilities, but also making sure that she maintains her safety. And for Ellie, this has been a job that, just isn't about making coffee, but it's also gaining independence for her, building confidence, and just being a part of a supportive team. So really, really grateful. She has excelled beyond any of our expectations. And, with our support, he was able to expand, his hiring practice to welcome other employees that are coming on board with disabilities, demonstrating that, hey, with the right tools and mindset, businesses can thrive by embracing inclusivity. So, these are the things that ERAF stands for beyond just, throwing somebody money. We want to be a major contributor in removing barriers, fostering talent, and empowering businesses to make a difference. There's a lot of great benefits for, businesses that do, as you are aware. I won't, bore you to death with those, but the biggest one being that with people with disabilities, they stay at jobs longer, and with the right tools and whatnot, they can thrive. Thus, for the employer, that's a good return on their investment, to say the least. Next slide, please.
And Ray, we have a couple questions I'd like to ask you real quick. So one person says, will ERAF pay employers to provide a one-to-one job coach for folks with cognitively low individuals who would need that level of support to work in the community?
Yes. So as long as the coach is from outside of the organization, so as long as the coach is from outside the organization, that's something that we would be able to reimburse.
Okay. And then the second question we have is, can schools use ERAF funds for reimbursement for vocational education for students with disabilities?
Yeah, unfortunately, we cannot do that because this is meant for, them to be within the workplace. So,
Okay.
anything like education or whatnot, yeah, we can't do. So,
Got it. Thank you very much.
mhm. So, yeah, on this slide here, we want to continue spreading the word about this program far and wide. One of the things that we have every or fourth Wednesday of the month is an information session. And so our next one will actually be the 19th, at 2 p.m. virtually. If you are interested in that, I'll have my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me, to get signed up or, get the information and spread this to, your circles. If you would like me to come and speak to your organization or, your circle of professionals that you feel might be beneficial, I'll be more than happy to do that too. A lot of different ways we could connect, and I'm, definitely excited about connecting with all of you in one way or another. So on the next slide, um, like the STAR program before me, this is our contact information. Like I said, somebody can apply right there through the website. Feel free to send me an email, which you could do obviously directly at my email or via eraf.deed@state.mn.us, or give me a call. This number here is my direct line. So yeah, thank you very much for having me on. And like I said, I look forward to connecting with all of you.
Thank you so much, Ray. So much great information you just provided us. So thank you. You could advance to the next slide. Lindsay, take it away.
So as Jolene spoke about earlier, part of our innovation dollars and part of our getting into the world of assistive technology was a pilot project. We have 20 programs throughout the state, but we just focused on 6 programs to start out with. Programs with people that were already interested, already bought in, that already had those tech champions that we could really, really leverage to help figure out how we were going to implement that. Our initial goal was just to help the people we serve get access to technology. For reasons I'm not entirely aware of, a lot of the people we serve were left behind in this technical revolution, not having access to smartphones, not having access to technology. We just started to want to get the technology in their hands so they could see who it resonated with, who wanted to dive further into how technology could help them. And then our end goal is to really leverage that technology to increase independence with a real focus on employment, but of course, a focus on other services we provide like community integration, volunteering, things like that. When we started on this path, we really thought tech purchase was going to be a big part of it. So we purchased technology for these 6 programs, including smartphones, tablets, some VR headsets, and an app called Avail, which I'll talk about a little bit later as the next steps. And really started to dive in, how do we figure out who wants to use them, how to introduce them to them, how the staff are going to support them. And also we had our staff who had the CSUN training, received that certification to be an assistive technology practitioner. And they started to find individuals that we serve that already had a need for assistive technology and started to provide the assessments necessary to figure out and kind of match them with the technology that was going to work for them. And we'll hear from Dell in a little bit about her experience with being one of our first assessments, getting the technology and how that's impacted her job. One of the biggest things, people are just resistant to technology for whatever reason. I'm going to turn my camera off because I'm having some connection issues. And so really trying to find the staff that already have that and can get other people involved. I just cannot overestimate how important that is. Giving our staff an opportunity to learn and the people we serve an opportunity to learn was really, really important. And of course, that data collection piece is always key when you're starting something new, exploring what's working and what's not working. And we created a survey. So every time somebody utilized some of the tech we purchased, they could give us information back about their experience with that. Next slide.
Thank you, Lindsay. And as she described already, some of the information on this slide, we collected some data and we found that 91% of our staff that used the new devices, the tablets, found that there was beneficial use to those tablets. And the people that we support also had a very positive experience. They liked using it. They liked learning from it. They've done few different things, even in the aspect of relaxation techniques, for example. And again, Lindsay said that she's going to talk about a little bit more, or a little later, the software that we found too. I want to advance the slide here to the next one because I want to give Dell the opportunity to share her story of assistive technology and a little bit more about the fun job that she has. Take it away, Lindsay, Dell, and Vanessa.
So I'm just going to prompt everyone in the audience. Use your arrow keys there if you are able to find Dell and Vanessa. We want you to be able to see Dell as Dell shares her story because she is going to be actually showing some of the tech that she utilizes. So Dell, are you ready to start this presentation?
Yes.
All right. So Dell, why don't you just let's start from the beginning. Why don't you tell us, some about your employment search and some of those challenges that you had to finding competitive integrated employment?
Yeah. Getting turned down by lots of employers during interviews. They had a hard time understanding me.
Thank you, Dell. And that was previous to you having a communication device. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, why don't you tell us about your new job and who you work for?
I work at the US Bank Stadium as a guest service attendant with assistance from staff at West Metro. I give out select merchandise such as buttons and hats to customers who attend Vikings games or other events such as Monster Jam.
Well, that sounds really fun.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience finding technology that's helped you at your job?
My therapist asked me questions on some technology devices. She showed me a lot of different ones. I chose Dynavox because it was easy to use.
Wonderful. All right. And so I know you use the Dynavox. You also use a couple other items. Can you show us those devices? And I think Vanessa's going to help a little here, right?
Yes. She's going to tell you a little bit about them.
Great.
Yes. I use the Dynavox to communicate. My stylus pen that wraps around my wrist to help push the buttons I need to use. I use Velcro to help stabilize my stylus pen. I attach it to my index finger. I have my noise-canceling headphones to help alleviate the loud sounds.
Wonderful. So I'm seeing some really high tech with that Dynavox. I'm seeing some lower tech with that Velcro. You kind of did the whole spectrum there, didn't you, Dell?
Yeah.
All right. So how do you use this at your job?
Had a little tech. It's okay.
And Vanessa, you could just describe it if the tech's not working there for
An
that.
app for me and show me how to use it. They put it on the table, then turn it on, and I practice using my device. I use a stylus pen that wraps around my wrist to help me answer questions or when I need something.
Wonderful. What do you like about this job with US Bank Stadium?
Making money, it's a fun job. I get to meet new people, working Vikings games, and community outings.
Wonderful. And what do you think the future holds for you, Del? What do you see moving forward?
Hopefully still working at the Spank Stadium, using my device independently, and saving enough money to visit my mom in the Virgin Islands.
Wonderful. I've heard even now that you've got the headphones too, you're even considering other venues that maybe have loud things going on. Is that true?
Yeah.
All right. So maybe even expanding that employment a little bit, huh?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to ask Vanessa a couple questions. So Vanessa is one of our wonderful staff who went through the CSUN curriculum and obtained her certification to be an assistive technology practitioner. So what additional information do you want to share with us, Vanessa, just about the process of you providing services to Dell around assistive technology?
Sure, I would love to. For Dell, I made sure that we worked as a team. We had lots of conversations. Anything that she told me no to, I respect, because we didn't want to have that advice abandonment. It took us a little while to find the things we needed, and her being such a great advocate for herself, I was able to start off with the Dynabox. And then once she got employed, she was able to let me know that she was struggling with the noise. So then that's when we went into the sound canceling headphones, which we tested out through Minnesota Star first. And we saw that it was really useful. And then through VRS, we were able to get it purchased.
And then did that take some additional tweaking after Dell had those items to really make it work for her? And what did that look like?
Yes, so we set up training with the Dynabox representative for her staff here at Metro Community Resources. With that, they were able to help work with her so she can become familiar with how to use it, as well as staff to help encourage it so we didn't have advice abandonment. Then a few weeks ago, Dell reached out in her SDS, her case, and stated that she was struggling with holding the stylus. So I reached back out to James, who was a great help, and collabed with him. And we came up with the little Velcro straps that we found online, and it was like $2.52. Want to show? And it came in different sizes. And so now she has several packs of them. So if she loses it, it won't cost her any more money.
Wonderful. Now, another person did the assessment for the Dynavox, correct, Vanessa?
Correct.
So how did your knowledge that you kind of expanded through CSUN and through being part of Minnesota NEAT, like what did that give you that then allowed you to help make suggestions for that Dynavox to be more implemented within the vocational program?
Of course. So through the CSUN, they always recommended for us to stay in our professions. Since I was not a certified speech therapist, when she was going through VRS, we put in a referral to Courage Kinney, who helped her get the Dynabox set up and go through a more detailed assessment than I was able to. But I was able to stay in contact with Courage Kinney to help make sure that the process was going smoothly.
Wonderful. And then, how much did all this cost Dell? What kind of out-of-pocket cost did Dell have throughout all of this that we've talked about today?
All of it cost her was $2.52, which is for the Velcro straps. but everything else was covered through VRS or through Medicare.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much, Del. And Del, you'll stay on in case somebody has a question after the presentation for you, correct?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Next slide.
Thank you so much, Del. A lot of information was learned and has been learned and continues to be learned for us as an agency and for our programs. As we've alluded to, we've done pilot projects throughout them, and our next steps are going to be rolling some of those out to the rest of our programs as well. We have definitely learned a huge amount of information. Hopefully we've shared some of that with you today from the Minnesota STAR program. We learned the lending library thought that we had in the very beginning of our project pitch, where we needed to have a whole bunch of devices available for people to use. We actually learned they already have that for us. We do not have to develop a lending library. So that's one of the things that we learned that was quite large. That's a huge amount of money to purchase those devices. And we also learned that we do not need to purchase all of those devices even, because they can go through STAR to try some of the things out. And then we want to encourage the teams, the people that are searching for jobs, to purchase some of their own devices, but we can help them find some of those funding sources to help purchase them. There's just so many different variations in the different devices. And so another lesson we learned is just between Apple and Android software, there's certain apps that work on one and not on the other, and vice versa. So we're learning some of the ins and outs of the different companies and what they provide and what they naturally provide. I just read an email come through yesterday about Apple software and some of the things that are already incorporated into the Apple software. So very unique information, but hugely robust information as well that we continue to learn on a daily basis. It says there the devices. One of the things we also learned and heard from some of the resources is that on average, the different technological devices are only good for a year or two, like phones and tablets. And so we were really thinking that's going to be another huge cost to us. But again, using resources like STAR, who already have those available to try out before actually purchasing things, has really been huge in learning, in us learning the different options that are available to us. Managing the devices, another area we continue to grow and learn in our pilot project and with our tech champions, how to go about that and how to navigate that system. We also learned, and I think Lindsay alluded to it a little bit, that our staff are not always tech savvy. And so we also have learned this great way of trying to incorporate that into some of the things that the staff are doing, having them practice on the different devices and learn more about what is available with the software options. That also has been a huge learning curve for us. Next slide, please.
It really has been interesting to start this process thinking getting into the world with assistive technology was going to be all about technology. And really, I think, Jolene, it's kind of all about knowledge, collaboration, and finding resources. Kind of the last part is the actual device. And we've already got great things within Minnesota, expertise, knowledge, willingness to collaborate. That's not something that us at the program level have to recreate. It's really the dedication, the focus, and getting staff excited about this. And then with the staff really, really getting the people we serve excited and access. And once that happens, watch out, right? It's really gonna start to grow. So a couple of next steps for us is we are diving into a couple of different type of software. One of them is the Avail app, and the Avail app is marketed as an app that can replace job coaching. Of course, this isn't for some situations and some people, right? But we're really starting to dive. It only took us about a year to get that approved, but we're excited to put that and implement that. Next, we've got career labs. Those are on our virtual reality technology. And this will allow some of the people we serve to, through virtual reality, experience what it may feel to be in a certain environment, trying certain tasks. So we're really excited to put that into practice. And it's just been in the last couple of weeks that we've actually got these in our hands and are starting to roll them out into our programs. And then just a deep dive into what's out there and what is free, and allowing staff the time to dig into that and really help them understand what is available for funding through the waiver or through VRS for them to, analyze and think about what technology could increase independence for the people we serve. So exciting stuff still on the horizons. Next slide. We really want to.
I'm sorry, one moment, Lindsay. We did have a question. One of our attendees would like to learn a little bit more, know a little bit more about the Avail app. Can you provide a little bit more details on that?
Yeah, so the Avail app, if you know what systematic instruction is, it is really breaking tasks down into the small steps that add up to a task, and then thinking about how that employee that we're supporting, how they best learn, what kind of prompts and support they are receiving or need from job coaches, and then really thinking of how the app can provide it. So through this app, we can create videos, we can create, auditory prompts, we can create still images, whatever the individual needs at the time to meet their employer's expectation. So this can really help people increase their speed, increase their quality, be able to do sequential steps in a task with that prompting support. And what's really cool about the app is it collects the data around all of this, and it helps the support staff understand when we can reduce the level of support needed. So if we start with a video, of course, to watch the video in between each step decreases somebody's productivity. But as they reach mastery, we can go from a video, maybe just to auditory prompts, if that's what's right for that job or for that employee, or maybe it's just to a still image to prompt them what they've been watching the video, and we can decrease that over time. And it pulls all that data. Also, we're working towards fading supports. So somebody can be at the job working on the app, and we can be remote, checking in on that person, seeing if they're flowing through their tasks that day, seeing if those things are working well, following up with them after the shift to talk a little bit about those things. You can really hone in on what part of a task is the hang up, where that support is needed, and then evaluate, do we need to come back and retrain? Does the person need different type of prompts? Like, what exactly is causing this area to need that support? So that's in a nutshell what the Avail app is. And one of the great things about Avail is that you can do this offline. So if you're working with somebody that maybe has some health or safety things around being online, that doesn't even come into play with the Avail app. Now, some of those live features obviously are going to be different, but it still collects all the data for you. So it really can be customized to the person's learning style, the person's preferences, and then it can change as they reach mastery.
So it sounds like you're using the Avail app now.
We just got the Avail app, so we have not put it into practice. We have it in our hands right now. We are just highlighting the first people that are going to be incorporating it into their job. So we're like a weekend.
Okay, and can you drop a link to the Avail app website?
Absolutely. I see one was dropped in there. I'll just make sure it's correct. And yeah, wonderful.
Great. Thank you, Sherry. Okay, now I'll go to the next slide.
And that really concludes our presentation. So we wanted to allow for some time here at the end to take any questions that people might have. Thank you for your time today. There's our contact information from emails there on the screen right in front of you. And yeah, we're available for any questions that you might have.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I've just got a couple slides I'm going to cover, and then we'll open it up for questions. You can, for our attendees, you can continue to put those questions, ask questions in the chat. So, thank you so much for the folks who made this training possible. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day, and thank you for our attendees for joining us. MTI's next training will be in May. We're still working on that topic, but you can check out our website, which is on the screen here, and go to the trainings tab, and you can see the information as we post it on upcoming trainings. And you can also view recordings of our previous trainings, and we've got them divided out into categories, the training topics. Another exciting training opportunity that MTI is sponsoring is the Credentialed Employment Support Professional. And so our project will be covering the cost of the exam for up to 12 employment support professionals to take this test, which will then result in the earned credential of the CESP. This is through APSE. That's the Association of People Supporting Employment First. The credential is designed for employment support professionals, so employment specialists, consultants, job developers, job coaches. There's a lot of different names, but you know the great work you do. And for those professionals who utilize employment first best practices to assist individuals with significant disabilities to obtain and maintain competitive employment in integrated community workplaces. We encourage you to consider joining this elite group of 2,100 plus CESPs nationally. There are currently only 17 in Minnesota, and we're going to support 20 DSPs to get this credential. And there are some requirements for this. You must have a high school diploma or GED equivalent. For your professional work experience, you must have 1 year of paid employment support professional work experience or 9 months of paid work experience with additional relevant trainings and internships. There is, of course, a code of conduct that goes along with this credential. All applicants and credential holders will agree to the ESPCC Code of Conduct as a condition of certification. And so we've got some links here on the screen so you can find out more. My colleague Sherry Healy is spearheading this particular initiative through the MTI project, so you can reach out to Sherry. Her email is on screen here. And the application deadline is next Friday. For folks who are interested in doing this, MTI will also offer a community of practice to help folks prepare for that test, which you will take at the MORE conference, which is in May. So please reach out. I know that's a lot of information, but please reach out if you've got questions. And it looks like my colleague Sherry dropped some of these links into the chat as well. Let's see. Okay. And then last but not least, a webinar would not be complete without an evaluation. Please take a moment to complete the evaluation about the webinar today. It will, we use that feedback to continue to bring you quality webinars that are relevant to the work that you're doing. So I'm going to leave this up here for a moment so folks can use the QR code function. And then also, Sherry, would you be able to drop a link to the evaluation in the chat as well?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. I included it in the notes on this slide. All right. I'm going to stop sharing screen now. Sherry's going to also drop a link to the evaluation. Please complete that. And now we want to open it up for questions. We've got about 15 minutes for questions, so I'll keep an eye on the chat here. Questions for any of our guests today?
Is anybody going to ask Dell if she can get us into some Vikings game at the U.S. Bank Stadium? Or
That's what I was thinking.
I know you're all thinking it. Or Monster Truck, is that next weekend, Dell?
Yeah.
So what do we got to do to get an invite?
She said you're not going to get in free.
Okay, just tell us about it after it's over. All right, Dell, that'll be good enough.
All right, looks like we've got one question in the chat here. I have someone looking to purchase a cell phone for the first time to increase independence at work. Where would be a good place to start looking into reduced cost options? Great question.
Vanessa or Jameis? Who would want to be the one that answers that question? I'm going to say those are the two people in the room that I would turn to ask that question.
It's a difficult question to answer. There's not many resources for cell phones out there. I don't know if a waiver could cover a cell phone if it's used for independence. That is something that we could reach out to Anna and Elena from Minnesota NEAT. They have more knowledge about that. I don't believe the cell phone is covered, but the app could be potentially covered if it is for their independence. But I don't want to misspeak. So if you're looking for recommendations for a simple phone to start with, RAS memory phones are really great because you can customize what you want displayed on the phone. You can just have the call feature enabled so that you can just call versus having all the extras that phones come with, which can be very overwhelming for somebody who's just learning how to use a cell phone. So I don't know if I answered your question or not, but there's lots of other resources too that you can utilize for funding. You can reach out to your local Lions, Legions, VFW organizations and request a scholarship. If it is promoting your independence, it's possible that they might grant small scholarships. ARC Microgrant is another great resource for individuals who are trying to seek employment, looking for small grants and scholarships to be able to purchase assistive technology. The Minnesota PEO Home Fund is another one where you can apply online and see if you can get a scholarship. So again, you can reach out to the Minnesota STAR program. We have all these resources kind of in our back of our head, and I can send an email kind of summarizing the different resources out there for funding.
Also, go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Jameis. One person dropped in the chat. This is Anna M. said that cell phones can be covered by waiver, just not the data plan.
Yep.
And that's the Anna I'm talking about. So thanks, Anna.
Got it.
And that's what I was going to say. It's often not the device, it's that monthly plan. And sometimes when we're looking at exactly what the person needs, sometimes one of those smaller tablets on Wi-Fi can meet a lot of their needs also. So trying to really, I know part of what we're trying to do is really get to the heart of how that technology is going to be utilized. What are those barriers? How can those barriers be overcome and still meet those core needs? So that's another way we've been thinking about that a little bit differently. Also, when we think about the apps, some of those apps can run when they're not connected to Wi-Fi. And that's a real bonus for some people in some situations.
And Jameis, did you say it's the Minnesota PEO Home Fund? Was that what you referenced?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to drop the link for that in the chat. Thank you so much. I was not familiar with this. And I think that there's so many great programs out there that us professionals, we can't possibly know them all. So it's good to pool our resources. So I just dropped the link in the chat for that. Looks like we have a few more questions. Kathy asks, would you mind sharing the Career Lab contact info again? I think, is that included on one of the slides? Because we will be sending out the PowerPoint to everyone.
I just put it in the chat again.
We did drop it in the chat too. They've got a great website, and they're another company that's wonderful to work with asking questions and learning more about it. There's some videos on there. Career Labs is amazing with the virtual reality headsets. It really allows the person to be in that environment, and we've already had some success around that with the Career Labs, being able to choose a different field, and you can go in there and operate a forklift, for example. You can go into a kitchen and try out any of the different jobs in a kitchen, such as a chef or the dishwasher or the sous chef, or any of those different items that have to do with working in a kitchen. So very, very neat software item, that Career Labs with virtual reality headsets. It's been a huge success.
I do believe that the viewers can't see what you've posted in the chat because it's just posted to hosts and panelists. So if somebody could switch that to everyone, then everyone would be able to see that.
Thank you. Thank you, Jameis. We'll work on that. I apologize, folks. One question.
I'm sorry, Brian. I also put it in the Q&A too, the link.
Thank you, Sherry. We have a question for Vanessa. Could I get some information on the Dynavox that you use? I have someone who could benefit from that. So I guess Vanessa
yes.
or Del.
I can get the information. I don't have the link, but I do have the representative that helped Del and I. Her name is Amy, I believe. And I can find that email, and she's been a wonderful help, and she loves when people reach out. So I will pull up her contact information, and she can give you a great resource, a lot better, and details as they keep coming up with brand new devices, as this was catered directly for Dell. So they have different styles, but I will look that up and put her contact information in there for you guys.